Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fourth episode of Black Nerds Matter. I'm your host, Dedrick Davis, and I'm happy to announce that we're conducting interviews fully online. As you can see, I'm recording from our new high-end remote studio, my broom closet. Anyways, I'm excited to introduce our next guest, Anisa Sellers. She's an educator at the Virginia Aquarium, VSU graduate, and a TDP alumni. How you doing, Anisa?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. You're doing an amazing job with this podcast. I heard it. I was like, ooh, let me come see what it's all about.
No, I'm glad. I'm really glad. Seeing having people like you is the reason we're able to do this. It's a community thing, and want to help as many people as I can get their stories out because everyone deserves to have theirs heard. So yeah,
Very much so.
I have a few questions for you. Hope you're planning on answering them. I mean, you're here for a reason, right?
Yes.
Okay, so how did you get into marine science?
So I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia, so right on the beach. And so that's where I learned how to swim. And I just love seeing all the animals. I want to learn more about them. And that's kind of where I found my passion for marine science. I always wanted to be a marine scientist and ride a whale. That was my ultimate dream. I'm gonna get to that whale one day. But yeah. And I also became a competitive swimmer in my early years, which also kind of made me a bit more appreciative of the water. I learned how to swim in the Chesapeake Bay. And then I was put into swimming classes as well as a swim team early on in my early years. And then continued that up until high school. And I love the water. I'm a fish. And then yeah, I just wanted to learn more about what was in the water because I would go swimming out there. I'm like, oh, there's so many critters down here that I want to just touch and see and learn more about. That's one of the main reasons. I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian because my sister's a veterinarian and she loves animals, the, dogs and cats, but I wanted to be outside. I don't want to be in an office all day. That's not for me. I want to explore. And I'm happy I get to do that now, somewhat.
Okay, so you mentioned your sister. I mean, anyone who knows Anissa knows family's a really big deal to her. So how's your family supported you through doing marine science?
My family supported me by just being there for me. They have never in their life thought about doing marine science, so they don't really know what's going on. Even my sister to this day, she's like, I don't know what you got going on over there, but I'm proud of you and what you're doing. And I'm like, thank you. Because sometimes it's kind of hard to communicate what I do to them because they don't have that background that I do in science, at least environmental science and marine science. But I definitely do have their support. I love them and they love me. And they're happy. They want to see me succeed. They're like, oh, are you going to go diving? Are you going to go do this? Please let me know. And I always try and update them on all my adventures and all the things that I do. But yeah, it's a lot of support, which I appreciate because you don't always see that in families. So I'm very appreciative for what they do for me.
Okay, and so you mentioned in Norfolk and then doing swimming and all that stuff there. Is Norfolk a predominantly black area?
I wouldn't say it's predominantly black, but the community that I grew up in was predominantly black. So the family that I have, as well as my family's friends and just the support system that they have in place for me in Norfolk, they're all of color. I will say, like in school, I did see that I was primarily a minority. There are a lot of white people around. Yeah, so it's kind of hard to say because Norfolk back in the day was very segregated. So they had like the predominantly, or not predominantly, but they had the black schools and then they had the white schools. So I went to Maury High School, which back in the day used to be the white school. And then some of my family members went to Booker T, which back in the day was a black school. And so you can kind of see the differences in them. But yeah, and you also see that it's very gentrified too nowadays. So a lot of the, places that I saw back in the day that were predominantly black are starting to shift over. So that's another thing that I've been kind of seeing.
That's wonderful to see that. I mean, just to see you able to like your culture and be able to see that in the landscape instead of it being segregated. I'm sure that's a big deal for you and the people in your community. How was swimming when you were swimming there? Did you ever see people look like you when you were swimming at swim meets or when you were doing swimming lessons? How was that experience when you were younger?
God. Let me tell you right now, I was the only one.
Wow.
For yeah, yeah. Oh God. Okay. Well, it wasn't bad, but most of the time I went to the meet in especially in school, would be the only black person, which it was different. It was hard. But yeah, yeah, so it was predominantly white. I was the only black person on the team. I realized a little later on that there was a mixed person on the team. I didn't realize they were very white passing. And you could feel the difference. You could feel the difference. because I had different hair, I looked different, obviously, different cultures, very much a culture shock. And I remember one time I was in the locker room and I heard one of the girls say the N word and they looked right at me. And I was like, what'd you
Ooh,
say? And I was shy back then. I was shy.
ooh.
I ain't, I wasn't as long. I wasn't as talkative. But I was like, what do I even do? It just made me feel alienated because I was like, I want to say something, but I feel like I can't. And it made me feel inferior being in the minority and witnessing things like that or hearing people talk about me. So that's why I'm kind of like on my road to like, being in organizations and different institutions and things where, you know, they like to appreciate diverse voices and backgrounds and really uplift us and give us the best opportunities. So trying to find my way in the world that way.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. But no, I
Yes,
mean,
yes.
I the reason I do Black Nerds Matter and all that is just to hear these kind of stories. Because I feel like a lot of people aren't necessarily able to communicate that because I feel like that's a very common experience is to have those moments where you don't feel like you belong and you feel alienated from the group you're in. You're in this group at home with your family, people that you're comfortable with doing similar things to you, and then you go try something new away from these people that you're normally used to. And then it can be a whole culture shock and system change and all of that. So, can you help explain to me how you felt going to a situation like being in TDP and then working with Black and Marine Science and how that was different from being in a predominantly white area swimming and doing all these other things.
So yeah, it was the best thing ever. I'm so thankful I got to meet all of you, but TDP was actually life changing. I feel like I wouldn't be in this position that I am without them. I would not have been able to go to Black Marine Science Week last year, where they had their inaugural conference, BIMS Week, in Norfolk, Virginia, which was even more amazing because I
Your
was like right down
hometown,
the street.
hometown.
Yep. I was like right here. But yeah, TDP definitely gave me a chance to do things I never thought possible, like get my scuba diving certification, get to meet other professionals of color who are successful in the field, and really just made me feel loved and supported. Not a lot of RUs and internships do that. And to connect me with amazing people like you guys. Like I love my cohort from 2023. Y'all are kind of cool, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, and they definitely paved the way for me to, get into organizations like BIMS, Black Marine Science, and BWEEMS, so Black Women, Environmental Ecology, and Marine Science. But yeah, I definitely appreciate all that they've done. And I like that they've opened the doors to see that like there are a lot of people of color in this field, there are a lot of minorities. You can succeed in this field. And I want to continue. And it's a small community because I feel like I keep seeing the same people over and over. Like, what is it? At the Virginia Aquarium, we have this program that we're working alongside Hampton University with. And I get to see Dr. Davis, like Dr. Danette Davis, who was our keynote speaker for our conference that we did for the TDP symposium for our year, 2023. And so it's like I keep seeing these familiar faces, and it's just really cool to know that TDP kind of gave me that entryway to this amazing new support system who can kind of lead me on to my career in science versus my family who, kind of started this whole journey with me.
And I think the most beautiful thing with that is having your work family and kind of meeting people that way so you have that support and that sense of togetherness with people at work. But I feel like you realize the
Hmm.
world is so much smaller when you're doing science, and you realize all these people that are doing the same stuff with you are like a stone's throw away. And I think that that's insane because I'm like, I had no idea you were even close to me. Like, for example, I was working with Walter Smith in Tampa, and he was at Black and Marine Science Week, and I had him as a guest on the show before, but that was crazy. I would have had no idea that he was that close to where I was if I didn't go into these other events. So it's awesome getting those networking opportunities.
Very much so. People don't really understand like how vital that is. And someone had told me in college that it's not the like what you learn is the people you know. And I guess I never understood with them. Never really understood like TDP and networking, and all these things. So it's really the people who you know are going to kind of help you in your career to give you these different opportunities and just help you out, be your support system, you know. Because I remember when we were applying for grad school, at least when I was trying to apply for grad school last year, I was like, I'm gonna get PhD. It's gonna be great, and it was so hard. And so really relying on some of the TDP alum, are people from my cohort to really just talk to and be like, This is a hard time. Are you struggling? Same. I'm also struggling. Let's struggle together and talk about it.
Awesome. I want to kind of shift gears here a second. I wanted to ask you something,
Mhm.
and it's something I've been wondering on my own and never got the chance to actually ask you, but how did being neurodivergent affect your experience as a scientist in academic settings and even your personal, regular, everyday just dealings with people?
They feel like you would. Guarantee. I EDT my best, y'all. I did my best. Y'all crazy. I felt so bad. I put y'all through the ringer. Oh God. Anyway, anyway, so I will preface this by saying I'm not diagnosed autism, but it's highly, highly, highly suggested with my family. Because first off, my mom has a learning disability. My dad is uh, diagnosed autistic. Me and him are basically the same person, share the same symptoms, basically. Well, not symptoms, but we definitely have a lot in common. He loves to read medical books for fun, which I find amazing. I like to read just regular books for fun. And the one thing that I noticed is that I really have a passion for learning. And I still have times trying to figure out how my brain works differently than others. I started kind of realizing once I hit high school that my brain worked a little differently and wanted to kind of explore why that was. Because I was like, I think I'm a little crazy. Like, I think I got something going on. And, not a lot of black people like talking about mental health and things like that. So you're like, you're just like your daddy, And I'm like, okay, I guess. Didn't really explain much, didn't really put a name to it. And I really didn't even find out my dad was like autistic and all these things till like high school. And I was like, oh, there's a name for that stuff. And I was like, okay, maybe I can work with this. So I did a lot of reading, a lot of like looking. I did like the little test online, which, you don't want to know the results, but it was kind of bad. It was like, okay, girl, you definitely on the spectrum. It's given. It's really given. And I really love to learn. So that's the one thing that I feel like it kind of assists me because I love to learn. My brain was just happy to take in all the information. I was in the gifted classes, which I like to say are like for special needs kids, their brain works on a different level that make it a little easier for them to learn. Because, yeah, that's my perspective on it, even if that's not like 100% accurate. Yeah, the one thing that was kind of hard was focus, as you can't tell. I'm very focused right now. But also I would get not well overstimulated. Yes, I would get extremely overstimulated. And just start crying. I cried a lot. I cried a lot in school. People would literally be like, "Oh, teacher, Anissa's crying again," and I'm like, "I can't help. I really can't." Like elementary school, that's all they heard. And I also got bullied a lot because people would see me crying. I would say things, and people were like, "You're just kind of weird little black girl," and I'm like, "I don't know. It's just how I am."
Ooh, not weird little
And I,
black girl. That's crazy.
literally, literally. Um, and I also would like stem, which I didn't know that was a word for. So one thing I love is like listening to music, and I'll listen to like the same song on repeat for like forever, and I'll like hum it, but in elementary school, I would hum it really loudly, and I never really knew what I was doing. And I got put in lunch detention one time for that because the teacher was like, "Get distracted in the class." And I was like, "I'm literally humming a song," and I remember it because it was a song she had played in school, and it was talking about the different types of rocks, so like sedimentary rocks or the lava rocks or whatever. And it was a really good song. I gotta find it because it was so good. And I just kept humming it. And she was like, "You're distracting class. You're gonna go to lunch edition." I was like, "That's not even fair." So it did cause, some issues, but I think it did honestly aid me, because it definitely helped me to like do well in school. Because I really like to learn. I always wanted to find ways to make my brain learn, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to get into education. Not initially, but we can talk about that later. And then you have been in the field setting.
Okay, we lost Anissa again for a second. Okay, after some technical difficulties, we're back. Anissa's on her trusty computer now. So you were speaking earlier about how you were in school and you were stimming and different things were happening. You got in trouble, you even went to lunch detention for that. How did those kind of situations prepare you for dealing with people later on in your life, knowing that they might not understand you and why you do the things that you do?
I'm not gonna lie, it made me hella insecure. And I think that's why I am quote unquote high masking because I learned to be like kind of suppress that part of me because I realized that's not something people are going to understand or accept. So I had to figure out ways to compensate for that. And so That's something I've kind of always done. So kind of really really thinking about my actions, things that I do, finding other ways to cope instead of like stimming. Like if I do start to hum, I'll try and like do something different, kind of catch myself. Because I was like, that's not something that I want people to criticize me for or punish me for because I can't control it. So that's been a journey. I'm still on that journey, trying to figure out who I am. And I think that's why I felt so comfortable for TDP because I was like, these are all people of color, all different mindsets and backgrounds. I can kind of be my real self. Maybe I was a little too much my real self because you already know I
No,
got.
you weren't. You weren't. No.
Oh, okay. I know.
Yeah, you were awesome. Yeah.
Literally,
Yeah, as long as you weren't
literally.
trying to pet stingrays and stuff, then it was fine.
That's true. Don't tell
So,
Peggy or Paula because I may or may not have touched a couple more things. They don't want to know.
okay, I'll make sure not to send them this one.
Please.
So with all of that being said, is there any advice you'd give to somebody that's going through the same kind of things as you and has a mind that's not the same as everyone else's? I know you said you suppressed that part of you, but do you think there's any way you could help someone not feel the need to do that?
I guess my main thing would be like, don't give two shits about what anybody else thinks. Like, you have one life to live. You better live it to your fullest and just accept yourself, whatever that may look like. Whether you are, part of the LGBT community, whether you are of color and you want to be more accepting of like your culture, whether you are neurodivergent and your brain just works differently. Like, you want to make sure that you're happy and comfortable, first of all. You don't have to cater to other people. And I felt and it's crazy because I would cater to like, people who really didn't even give a crap about me. And it's like, what? The people who do care and love and support me don't care who I am or what I am. Like, I can still remain professional, but I can still have my moments, and that's okay. Like, I can still, be a productive member of society, still, have the brain that I do. And if you aren't able to be a productive member of society, that's still okay because people have different levels of, ability and functionality and like just how their brain works. Like, it's all okay. You're born the way you are and fuck what anybody else says. I don't, that's okay. But yeah, and if you don't know what kind of brain you have, like if you've never been introduced to like being neurodivergent or things like that, just take the time to just look some things up. Follow some content creators on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube and try and figure out, if this is something that's for you. Because I never really understood. And I think it's worthwhile when you understand who you are in all aspects. Like, how does your brain work? What kind of things? Because then it can start to kind of begin that healing. Like, who are you? What works for you neurodivergent brain wise, or it just makes you, I feel like grow as a person, be the person you really want to be. Because I feel like I've grown so much in these past few years because I kind of went on that journey of what the heck, my brain is kind of weird. Let me figure out what's going on and accepting that and learning how to cope and different mechanisms and just embracing it, all these things. So, yeah.
I think that's really powerful. Are you aware of the term savant syndrome?
What is that?
So savant syndrome is it's when someone's neurodivergent can have a really high level skill at something that you wouldn't think would be possible. Like for instance, I saw this guy who they'd fly him around in helicopters, and once he'd come back down from the helicopter, he could draw a detailed image of everything he saw, like the entire landscape below him. And that was because he was neurodivergent. His brain worked in a different way that we couldn't understand. He's like they called him like a human photograph, like a human camera. And there's another guy who's a human calculator. You can give him any numbers, he could divide them, multiply them, and do whatever. And I think that that's a very powerful thing that people don't understand is that for some of these inventions and some of these super cool things that are going on, just these very that you would say as something only a smart person could do or whatever. That's something that a lot of neurodivergent people are able to do because their brains work differently than ours, and it gives them a lot of unique strengths that we don't have access to. You may deem some of the things that they have as inert weaknesses, but they're not. They just work differently than us, and I think that there's value in that no matter who it is.
Very much so. Like, I feel like that's another thing that I really want to emphasize as part of like diverse minds and representation in all the things in the media and science and STEM. Because, we have different perspectives that can bring about so many amazing things to our society, whether that's art or inventions or just a different way of thinking completely. So I really want people to just embrace it, whoever you are. and just kind of go on that journey of like, what is my brain? Who am I? Because it's important, to be appreciative of all the things that make you up. Because you could be special like
Absolutely.
that. Like, that's a superpower. I love it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, one of my favorite cartoons when I was a kid, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, it was
Oh
made by somebody who was
gosh.
autistic, and I never knew that. I can see that the different kind of thinking could bring up something like that, and someone who would think in a normative way, not necessarily have that expanded level, wouldn't be able to think of all those crazy, wacky, cool, funny things that was going on in that show. And that's just something that I think about sometimes. It makes me think, people just are different, but that doesn't mean worse or better. It's just different, and that's okay.
Very much so. That's something that I'm still kind of figuring out because I feel like you saw me do this a lot. Literally in this interview, I kind of doubt myself, or like I'll backtrack and be like, oh God, I was a hot mess, because Lord knows I was a little bit of a okay, I'm gonna stop that right now. But, really just being like, I'm just different, and that's okay. It's a journey. It's a journey. I'm not fully there yet. I'm still learning, like, how my brain works, what kind of neurodivergent I really am. I low-key might go. I've been thinking about actually getting formally tested to kind of see, but like, I kind of don't want to just because it just seems like a lot for me at this moment. But I don't know. We're on this journey. It's not something that, you just wake up one day being like, oh, okay, I know what I am. This is it. It's like, oh, okay, I have a good day, I have a bad day. We're figuring it out day by day. That's all that matters.
So, did those experiences in school and not being necessarily as understood as you would have liked, did that draw you to K through 12 education and make you want to be an educator?
Not really. When I tell you I didn't really see myself going into the education field, all my life I was like, I would never be a teacher. Never. You wouldn't pay me $1 million to do it. Now look at me, I'm a teacher, basically. But I did have people who supported me and kind of made me realize that education is important, but also that if I understand something, why not help other people understand it as well? And so when I was in college, I became a chemistry tutor because I saw a lot of people were struggling in like Gen Chem 1. And I'm like, this is kind of an easy class. I don't know why y'all are struggling so hard. But, they didn't have a teacher like I did at high school who cared about chemistry and really made sure that her students understood what that was. And so that's kind of where that education aspect came in because I was a tutor and I was like teaching people like as a job for all 4 years of college. So I taught like chemistry, biology, all kinds of things. And I truly, truly enjoyed it. Like that was my absolute favorite thing of all. And I didn't really see myself becoming an educator. I still wanted to go into a PhD program and do research and all these things, and it just didn't work out. And so I took a job at the aquarium thinking, okay, this will be kind of cute, till I get my PhD program. And now they kind of stuck with me forever. I ain't going nowhere. So, and I like it. I really enjoy seeing the beauty of young kids take in that information, or even adults too. I really actually appreciate an adult's curiosity a lot more than a child. A child, is going to be curious. They're going to ask you questions. They're going to ask why. They're going to want to figure it out because they genuinely don't know. But an adult who is conditioned to think, oh, I know everything because I'm an adult, when they have that curiosity, it's like a beautiful thing because they're embracing that childlike person inside of them. And that's something I've come to realize. And this is something I've talked to with other educators as well, is that once you become a parent, everything becomes about the child. And so you don't really get to have that, exploration or that curiosity. It's like, oh, what does the child want? It's the child's curiosity, So I always like to embrace the adult too. Because, like, if their child doesn't care that I have a whole, crocodile skull, the parent, oh, ask me, like, what do you think this is? Why do you think this is? Like, come on, communicate with me. And they have such a beautiful experience with that. And one of my favorite things that I love to do too is I'll bring out like a coral and I'll bring out, like a sea sponge. And people are like, okay, that's coral, that's a sea sponge. I'm like, okay, are they animals or plants? And people are like, duh, they're animals. Everyone gets taught that they're animals. But then I'm like, why is it an animal? And then people are really curious because they're like, oh my
Well,
God, I have actually no idea why a coral is an animal or why a sea sponge or something that looks like a sea sponge or whatever is an animal. And so really letting them have that moment to really be like, oh my God, this is something new. I can embrace it. I can, be curious about it. regardless of what it is, even if it is, oh, this is for kids or whatever. I don't care about any of that. So, because I always had that curiosity, and I feel like people didn't let me really embrace that, even in my adult age. I think you've also seen this too. Like, I explore the world with my hands. I like touching stuff. I like seeing what it is. I like finding out what things are. I didn't always get the best reaction to that because people are like, why are you out here touching frogs? Why are you out here picking up lizards? Like, you're kind of weird for that. Why is that a toad on your hand? And I'm like, okay, maybe I should stop doing that, because people are looking at me like it's crazy, but I'm just curious, and that's okay. So I really love, love, love embracing that. I love it. I guess because it heals a part of me, that curiosity, seeing that, kind of shown in other adults, like, oh, that connection. Like, I'm curious, you're curious. I'm happy to allow you that moment to express it in a safe place where it's not like, oh, you're an adult, you should know this, or you're an adult, why are you looking at rocks and touching animals and stuff? That's for kids. It's like, no, that's not how that works at all. I don't care if you're, 25 or 96. We're going to get that curiosity in you.
So we're gonna touch some rocks, huh?
Yeah, we're going to go touch some rocks. We're going to go find a critter. I'm going to go pick up a spider. We're going to touch it. Name him Billy. There we go. Love it.
Billy and Mandy. Yeah,
Literally.
so what constitutes a good teacher for you? I'm sure you've been around a lot of different educators and you're doing the education thing yourself. What
Mm-hmm.
would you say makes somebody successful at connecting to someone else and getting them to learn that stuff, but not only learn it, but retain it as well?
The one thing that I think makes a good educator is meeting people where they are. Because at the aquarium, we get all kinds of people of different backgrounds, people of color, people who are neurodivergent, people who've never been to the ocean, doesn't know a thing about fish, hasn't even seen a fish in person. So I always try and meet them where they are. Keep things general but personalized. So for example, like let's say we get a large group of, kids maybe not from the best part of the city, because Norfolk, you have some more developed areas, some less developed areas. Some schools have a lot more resources than others. So let's say we get a lot of, kids one day who are, of color, they're a little rowdy. A lot of people will look at them and be like, oh, you're misbehaving. Stop running around. Stop doing this. Stop doing that. And I'm like, no, like, of course, don't run because you don't want to get hurt, but they're excited. So let's shift that excitement somewhere else. So I try not to immediately look at them and be like, oh, that's bad. Like, I don't want to, try and teach them. I want to criticize them and all this stuff. It's like, okay, well, how can we manage that excitement into a way that's going to be productive for the both of us? They get to learn something, and I don't have a whole bunch of kids wreck and tear like havoc everywhere because they're too excited. So really being like, oh, come here. I have this thing. Do you want to guess what it is? Do you want to touch? Like, let's go see. I love the art of distraction. That's my favorite thing. So if I see kids are out, everywhere, going, I try and bring them back in. Let's pay attention to Miss Anisa. Let's look at this biofact. We're gonna touch it. Do you know anything about it? Oh no, let me tell you some more about it since you guys don't know. Do you want to guess what this is? Do you want to guess what that is? And I really like to emphasize the textiles. Like, I love when people can actually hold something or touch something because that retains their attention in a whole nother way. Or let's say we get some kids who are neurodivergent. For example, I had a child who was neurodivergent, at least I think they were, just in their mannerisms. And so instead of being like, oh, they can't do this activity, being like, okay, how can I accommodate them so that they can enjoy this activity alongside everyone else in a safe way, in a way where they get that experience without, feeling prejudiced or, feeling excluded. But also, because a lot of times there are animals interacted with too. So we have touch pools at the aquarium that the animals are safe, I'm safe, they're safe, all the things. So that's why I also have toys. Like, for instance, if I'm at our Moon Jelly Touch exhibit, and we have a child who may not understand quite yet, like they could be like 10 years old, whatever. However, their brain just doesn't allow them to understand, like, some things you have to be a little bit more gentle on because, that's just how their brain works. Or they get really excited and they like, throw their hands around and they're super happy because they use like, that's just how they express their happiness. So, really guiding them, taking that time, like, okay, let's try this together. Let's, let me demonstrate it for you, or can you demonstrate it for me? And let's do one or two touches and let's, move on and let's look at some more things because there's so many more things to see. So really being patient, I feel like. and meeting people where they're at rather than being like just judging them offhand, like, no, I'm not going to deal with that. Or, oh, no, they're doing too much. We're not going to deal with that. It's like, no, I like it. I think it's a personal challenge for me each time I go to the aquarium. Because one thing about it, you'll see Miss Anisa first thing in the morning, 8 a.m., loud and happy. Good morning, y'all. People hate that. They're like, girl, it's literally 8 in the morning. Why are you so happy? Because I'm at work and we're going to learn some cool things today. We're going to touch some cool things. And, I always like having a whole bunch of different things on hand to meet different people. Because one time I had this family who were blind, so they didn't have as much vision. I guess, I don't know how to say words sometimes, but they just had a lack of vision. They were blind. Can I say that? Regardless. Anyway.
Yeah.
Visually impaired is what I think I'm trying
Visually
to say.
challenged.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was trying to
I was
find
say
like
visually challenged. I wasn't. Yeah.
there you go. I was like trying to find
Yeah. I
the
think visually impaired is probably
yeah,
better.
because blindness is a spectrum. Anyway, but yeah, so I literally, when I tell you, I went in the back and found everything that they could touch. I was like, we're gonna touch the Komodo dragon skin. We're gonna get out, some crocodile skulls. Like we're touching everything that you actually can't see. Like I don't even care. I don't care how big it is. People are like, Anissa, why are you walking around with like 2 million things and they all look like they weigh 50 pounds? Well, none of your business, but we got some things that I want these guests to really, touch and explore because I want them to have the same amount of joy out of this visit to the aquarium as any other guest, despite whatever, disability that they may have.
Awesome. I mean, I'm sure you can put yourself in their shoes and be extra patient with people because you know what it's like to feel when people aren't being especially patient with you and your needs.
Very much so. I definitely feel that way. And I feel like a lot of people will judge me too beforehand, like throughout my life, not at the aquarium. And so I want when people to come to the aquarium that, they're getting treated the same as anyone else, despite where they at. And to have that understanding, be open-minded, not just immediately assume because you don't know someone's life, you don't know what kind of day they've had, so really just being there because you could be making someone stay, you could, be making this a special moment for someone who may go into this career later on in, the future. And they can make beautiful, accomplishments in this field, our inventions, our improvements to our world. So I really like to try and highlight that. Keep that in my mind. Like this could be a special moment for someone. If it's a regular moment, okay, that's fine too. But I want to make sure everyone's getting the most out of this experience because it's sad, but it is unfortunately a privilege to go to the aquarium. Because not everyone has access to water like we do on the East Coast. Or, if you're in the middle of, the desert, maybe you don't have an aquarium to go to. You might have a zoo, but, I always like try and make it the most when people do come.
Yeah, I like to call that a SeaWorld moment because for me, when I got into marine science, was 'cause I went to SeaWorld with my parents in San Antonio when I was a kid and saw a hammerhead shark. Yeah, it was the coolest thing ever. Like I have hammerhead shark tattoos now. And that's what I call it a SeaWorld moment for that. Is like you have to get that moment that makes you realize, wow, this is really cool. This is what I want to do. And my main thing I'm doing as a science communicator and as a scientist is try to help people get to have their SeaWorld moment and have that ability to do that because I know not everyone has the privilege to do the things that I've done, but I want to make spaces available and things for people, whether that's programs in the future or whatever, to where everyone can have that moment and be like, okay, this is something for me, or okay, I don't really like fish and being in the water all the time, but I want people to have that ability because I just think there's probably been so many people who didn't know that they could go fishing for a living and swim with sharks and stuff to get paid like the way we do, and they end up doing something that wasn't beneficial and could be doing illegal activities, something that doesn't fulfill them when they had no idea that TDP and working at the aquarium and all these other things that we've done in the last few years exist. So I try to do as best I can to give people their SeaWorld moment because I wouldn't be where I was today if my parents didn't take me there.
I definitely felt that. I definitely do. Because we get people from all over, and I want to make sure that they also have that SeaWorld moment. And one thing about me, too, I also have different opportunities for people. Like, if I'm like talking to a guest and I hear their experiences, and I'm like, oh, wow, you should look into this because I think that'd be an amazing opportunity for you. Because I want them to, embrace all that marine science encompasses. And if they don't like it, that's okay. That just points you into another direction. What career you could have, what do you like, what can you, really flourish in this world. So, I definitely want to make sure that people have all the opportunities that they can. And I love that. I'm going to start calling it my SeaWorld. Okay, maybe not my SeaWorld moment because that's your SeaWorld moment, but maybe like my Chesapeake Bay swimming moment.
Hey, you can call it a SeaWorld moment. We can put that on a shirt.
Put on the
SeaWorld
shirt.
moment.
There we go.
We got it. I got my branding partner right here. Let's
There
do
it
it.
is. Period. Get that coin.
Yeah, so and this will be our last question for you today.
Okay.
What advice would you give to anyone pursuing STEM or a gap year like you've done? I'm not sure if you're still looking to go into higher education afterwards, but what would you give advice would you give to somebody going into their next stage of work and science after undergraduate?
So, what advice would I give them to their next step into undergrad or like into the world? I would say trust your gut. Whatever you feel like you want to do in the world, try and do it. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. But definitely be like, if you want to be like president, go for it. Like, get you the internships, get you the opportunities, and become president one day. I feel like you shouldn't limit yourself. Like, sky's the limit. Who tells you you can't? Like, they can tell you can't do it, but you can. There's so many different opportunities in this world. You can go literally anywhere. As for a gap year, take a gap year. I feel like I'm gonna keep advocating for it because I never would have discovered my love for education this much if I had not taken this job at the aquarium and really just settled down. And also, taking time after undergrad or even before undergrad allows you that time to get experience, real world experience, how to pay bills, because that's really real in this economy, how to, manage relationships, so friendships, things like that as you grow, how to handle various like different, conflicts or a different situation that life just puts you in. And more importantly, what do you like? What makes you happy? What is a career that you want to go into? Like, you can take, all the internships and stuff undergrad, that's okay. But really taking that time to explore who you are as a person makes all the more difference. And really taking that time to get that real world experience will, I feel like, help you so much more. And I get people's paths are different, so it's not bad if you go straight into a PhD program or MS, or if you go straight into undergrad after high school. But really, make sure that you have time to relax, to really explore the world. I know a lot of people joke and say that they go straight into grad school to run away from like adult responsibilities and like kind of get that same feel of school. But if you aren't able to right away, because grad school can be very difficult, definitely, take that time to really figure out how life is, because life is a lot and it's always changing. So really having a good sense of how to manage life and time and money. And then if you're looking to go into STEM, definitely look out for different resources. Like if you're in high school right now, keep in contact with your professors or your teachers. Same with undergrad students. Make sure you keep those connections with your teachers because they've already been through it. They're in a place where they can give you opportunities, write recommendation letters, recommend things. And if you do programs like, the diversity project or internships, stay in touch with your peers because they're going to be in that same place as you. Hell, even start reaching out to people. If someone were to email me talking about, oh, I saw you on this podcast, or oh, I see you, at the Virginia Aquarium, because I give my email out a lot. I'm like, oh, email me, let me send you these resources. Make sure you do that, because, you never know who's going to respond one day and be like, oh, that's really cool. Thank you for reaching out. I never get this before, but here are some opportunities since you decided to reach out. Let me help you out. I don't think people should, try and gatekeep things. I know I'd try not to. If they do, that's their prerogative. Okay, try another. I promise that hopefully isn't the majority. But yeah, definitely live life for you. Do whatever you feel comfortable with. If you feel like that's the next step, just going straight into grad school, go straight into grad school. Do you feel like taking a gap year? If the gap year chooses you, that's also okay. But, make sure that you're happy, regardless of what you're doing. That's the main thing. Whatever you're doing, whether you're working at JCPenney, whether, you're working with kids, working as an educator, doing a podcast, make sure you're happy.
Yeah, podcast.
Yes, go to the podcast.
We like those.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anisa. I'm really glad you were our first remote interview. I mean, you're making Black Nerds Matter. People like you let us do this, and I'm just happy, so happy you're here. Make sure you guys check us out at Black Nerds Matter, all one word on Instagram. Check out our merch, see video clips from each show, even this very episode, and fill out our form to do an interview. Anisa filled out the form, and look where she is.
Look at me.
She's in an interview. So yeah, guys, someone has to tell your story, so why not you? Thank you all for listening. This was a great interview. Have a good day, Anisa.
Thank you. Bye.